I have fond memories as a little girl of picking blackberries from an open field for my mother to make what she called a cobbler that was sweet and juicy. It was these memories that came to mind when I ran into blackberries as I was buying soil. I also remember the thorns that came with picking blackberries, but the packaging said these were thornless. They grow wild, so how hard could it be to grow them? I added the package to my cart and decided to focus on berries, and in particular, blackberries, for this episode. Once I got home and did a little research, I quickly realized the simple blackberry of my youth was a lot more complicated than I imagined. To keep it simple, there are thorn and thornless, trailing, erect, or semi-erect blackberries. The trailing and semi-erect type requires some form of trellis for support. Now, carefully reading the packaging, I learned mine were erect, so no trellis needed there. I also learned they are similar to blueberries, but require only a slightly acid sandy soil. And it takes about 2 seasons to see any blackberries, because the first season the plant just produces leaves called primocanes. In the second season, the leaf branches become woody, or floricanes, and then begin to produce flowers and fruit. So much for picking berries right away. But I thought I knew enough to begin the process of planting my blueberries. I wasn't sure how long these plants had been sitting on the store shelf, so the night before planting, I poked a hole in the bottom of the packaging and let them sit in a little water to make sure they were properly hydrated. While that was happening, I began the process of preparing the small bed I recently created. A good thing, because blackberries can quickly take over your garden. I'd already put in sticks and leaves in the bottom, so all I had to do was add more compost and topsoil. The new bed worked out perfectly to give the blackberry plants plenty of room to spread their roots, because blackberry roots are shallow but love to spread out. This should give them a good start for the first season. And of course, I put in some bone meal to give them the phosphorus they needed to set those roots. Once the blackberries were in the bed, I added a few coffee grounds to increase the acid level just a little, unlike the blueberries that definitely want an acid soil. Speaking of blueberries, they're in their second season and have produced a lot of blooms. Despite being self-pollinating, putting in a Jersey blueberry bush to cross-pollinate seems to have helped. While I was looking at them, I noticed a little bumblebee doing his part for the cause. Then, as long as I was working on berries, I thought it made sense to give the strawberries a permanent home. In an earlier video, I moved them out of the long bed and put them in a bucket. Despite being a little crowded, they seem to be thriving. Strawberries have shallow roots, so the bucket was more deep than needed, and I liked the idea of the berries being a little higher up for me to pick. Something like this. So it was off to the workshop to put it together. I had some narrow lumber left over from another project that I could use for legs. The bed would be 23 inches high and 35 inches long. I cut 4 23-inch legs and then 4 35-inch long planks that would make the sides. Once the wood was cut, all I had to do was nail the planks to the legs so I could screw them in place. With the two sides made, I decided 17 inches wide would make it narrow enough to not take up a lot of space, but also give the strawberries plenty of room to send out runners and expand. In no time, the outer frame of the planter was made. Now, I had to make the bottom that would support the weight of the bed. I put in supports and then moved to make the bottom of the bed. All I needed to do was measure the inside of the bed and then use some scrap wood to trace the cutout for the legs. And there was the raised bed for the strawberries. I did the usual sticks and leaves in the bottom, followed by compost and topsoil with bone meal. And then I was finally able to move the strawberries to their permanent home. I added a few onions as a companion plant to ward off pests. The strawberries could now enjoy their permanent home. But I may have to wait a season for that cobbler. See you next time.